Hello, everyone. Welcome into the Shakespearean Shrew Abroad. I am your Shakespearean Shrew, Karen Feiner, lover of all things bard, and this is a decorum be damned entrance into all things theater, literature, and the fun stuff in between. Today, I am talking with actors Miriam Worley and Dalten Hall, who will be playing lovers Miranda and Ferdinand in Shakespeare's The Tempest at Oklahoma Shakespeare in the Park. I am so excited to have you on the podcast and to talk all things Tempest and Shakespeare and lovers, if that is, we'll talk about the true love that exists. But is this your first production at OSP for both of you?
It's my first production with them. It's also my first Shakespeare show.
Oh, that's exciting.
Yeah, it's been really fun.
It's my first production as well.
But you've done the Shakespeare, Dalton. So for you,
a little bit.
Yeah. Very nice. And then Miriam, did you just graduate from OU?
Yes, I graduated on Saturday.
Congratulations.
Thank you. It's been a really fun weekend. Thank you.
That's awesome. So Dalton and I were talking beforehand and we were like, oh, we're crossing the bounds of UCO and OU.
Yes.
The ocean that is.
Yeah.
So that's always exciting because it seems like often productions tend to be one or the other. Like we have a huge OU cast or we have like a huge UCO cast. I always love it when it's an amalgamation.
Yeah.
I feel like you learn a lot when you act with people who are from different universities.
Yeah, I was, my understudy, Olivia, she is also from OU. And we were talking during rehearsal one day. We were like, it's nice to get to know people during rehearsal. Because usually you show up in the room at school and you know everyone already and they're in your classes. And it's been really fun to meet people and have to get comfortable really quickly.
And I was going to ask that about you two. So you did not know each other before this production?
No.
Mm-mm.
So what has it been like getting to know one another and kind of establishing that chemistry that you have to bring to the stage?
It's been probably 3 days, but it's been really great so far. I've liked getting to know Dalton. It's a super fun show in a really fun room, so just kind of working as you go, laughing a lot. It's been like that for me.
Yeah, I think it's super cool. For the first read through, I was very like in my head specifically about you, Miriam, because I recognized your name from, the callbacks because we were both at the same callback. And so I remember what you looked like and I was like waiting for you to show up because I was like, I have to make a really good first impression because that's going to like set the tone for the entire rest of the play. And then so when we met for the first time, I was like, shoot, I got to introduce myself like right now. And then I think it was great. And then you complimented my water bottle and I was like, all right, we're locked in. We're locked in. And then also just, it's only been, 3 rehearsals, but seeing the choices you make on stage and your comfortability in that gives me a lot of respect for you as an actress, which in turn leads to better chemistry for our scenes on stage. And so, it's all happening really fast, but I think we're getting along well and it's going to be a lot of fun. So I'm excited for the next 3 weeks and all the shows we got.
Yeah, thank you. I feel the same way.
I love it. It's like kind of giving first date vibes where you're like, okay, I've got to introduce myself. I've got to make a good first impression.
Right.
I think there's some similarities there that happen with the stage and, because again, you have to make your audience believe that you fall in love, right? So are there any things you think about when you think about performing love?
What's interesting about this show, and I guess a lot of like the Shakespeare love stories, is it's like that love at first sight thing. They're meeting each other for the first time. So kind of like keeping the chemistry of the first time you see someone is the challenge of that, I think. And that initial attraction where you don't actually know a lot about someone is what I try to focus on. And it's easier to love someone as an idea more than as like an actual person. So for these characters, I think that's why Shakespeare picks that love at first sight thing, because that chemical attraction is so easy to imagine because we've all felt it.
Mm-hmm.
I love that. And it's the first guy other than your father and Caliban that you've ever seen.
Yeah.
Sorry, Dalton, the bar's low.
Well, I hope I meet that standard.
So with that, how have you approached the relationship on stage with David? You know, David Weber is your director. How have, has he talked to you at all about your relationship and what he sees or what you all have seen emerging?
That's a really good question. We are kind of in our initial blocking. So a lot of it is about discovery and kind of commentary on the characters. A lot of the time we're working with Lance as well, who's playing Prospero, and he is such a Shakespeare genius. A lot of the time we'll stop and talk about how what this line actually means, that this character is feeling like this. And so I feel like we're making a lot of discoveries about the relationships right now, and I'm hoping that like as we do runs that'll deepen and we might get some more insight on that.
Yeah, agreed. We're playing with a lot of different kind of interpretations right now, but the big thing is like I'm looking for this kind of because they're both young. They're both the youngest people in the show, and so this idea of like first love, high school love, things that the audience can relate to, sort of manifests itself both into the words and between our dynamic on stage. And so this sort of like childlike wonder of like, oh wow, this is what it's like. This is awesome. There's been a couple questions of like, does Miranda know what love is? She's probably read it in a book, but does she know? And then, Ferdinand's the opposite, in which he has this monologue where he says, there's many a woman that he's eyed, and he's like, but none of them are you. And so this idea of both of them discovering what this first real love is very interesting to play and see on stage.
So Miriam, you said this is your first Shakespeare production that you've been in. Were you familiar with The Tempest? Had you read it before you were cast in it, or is this your first time really immersing yourself in The Tempest?
No, I didn't read it before I was cast. I should have.
There's no shame.
My school has a really great like Shakespeare program, but Tempest just wasn't one of the shows that we touched on, probably because like the scansion of it can be so weird because it's near the end of his career. But it's so simple in how complicated it is. That's what I've really appreciated about it. Like the story is so there, and it's got 3 or 4 like very solid plot lines, and I think it's actually a great intro Shakespeare show for audiences because there's so many great things to latch onto.
And Dalton, had you?
Oh yeah, I've done like a 15-page research paper over The Tempest. I love The Tempest. I'm a huge Shakespeare nerd in all things. Yeah, it's a great play.
I love it. I love the different dynamics that you're bringing to it. And that's really cool though, because you came in and had your first look at these characters. Miriam, what was your first reaction to the relationship between Miranda and Ferdinand?
Oh my god, it's so awesome. Who doesn't want to play someone like lovesick? And every line that Miranda has in the show, just about every line is a discovery, and that's a really fun character to play. There's so much discovery and excitement and fear and everything, and also like falling in love for the first time is such a fun thing to play. So it's been great too. I've been in my like prep work for the show so focused on Miranda and what Miranda's thinking, and now having Ferdinand in front of me as Dalton has like really helped me progress with the character and what she's actually thinking and how she physically reacts to meeting this person.
And Dalton, so you are very familiar with this play. Has performing it, and has that kind of started to reveal more about it, or do you feel like it's kind of reinstating some of the beliefs you had coming in about the production and the characters?
Yeah, well, interestingly enough, I don't want to say dismissed, but I was much more into Caliban's story and Alonso's story and Prospero's connection to both of those plot lines that I kind of dismissed Ferdinand and Miranda. Because, you read it, and if you've read Shakespeare enough, you see they fall in love, and I'm like, okay, I know how this one ends, they get married, so I wasn't too worried about it. But getting cast as Ferdinand and being able to focus specifically on him and his dynamic with Miranda and just those two characters, it really opens my eyes to a lot of stuff I was missing before, you know? Because they have this very simple love story, love at first sight. Boy proves himself to the father, you know, daughter's embarrassed by father's disapproval of, you know, this classic tale as old as time thing. And there's so many like nuances and niches in the language and the text, and saying these things and studying Ferdinand's lines is just so much more interesting than a passover on the history of the Tempest on its own, you know? Like some of the stuff he says, I'm like, oh wow, that's really cool and that's really smart on Shakespeare's part. So yeah, diving into Ferdinand specifically definitely changed my mind about him and Miranda, because I think they are so much more interesting and in tune with each other than I had initially thought when I read it.
I have to say, even Miriam, some of the things that you just said about Miranda kind of shifted my perspective of her. She's easy to dismiss.
Yeah.
She's not one of the more sarcastic, hard-hitting, strong female characters that we're used to. You know, when we've got Beatrice and Rosalind and, you know, some of these characters, she kind of fell to the background for me. But thinking about that idea of ultimate discovery, that idea of seeing everything new, brought a really interesting new way of looking at Miranda. That's quite refreshing.
Yeah.
I like that.
She's really cool because it's this combination of youth and knowledge, because she is raised by Prospero and she's raised with like so much learning and so much magic in her life. Yeah, you're right. She's kind of dismissed and she's not really seen as like one of Shakespeare's strong women, but actually she like has lived on this island her whole life and she is strong and intelligent. And you know, they have the scene where she's lifting the logs for him. And she's very green, but she's got a lot to her, and it's been really fun to explore.
Yeah. So what do you two make of the Act 5, Scene 1 chess match between Miranda and Ferdinand?
I think it's a lot of fun. I think it's our last little, you know, it's the final scene, so it's our last little button on what the relationship is between them. And I think this idea of chess, you know, chess symbolizes a lot of things. And back to that previous question about this idea that, you know, Miranda's dismissed and not smart. I mean, she's smart enough to play chess. I'm sure she wins the battle against Ferdinand, no question. You know, she even accuses him of cheating at the game. This idea of, you know, the goal is to win the king. And at this point, she thinks Ferdinand is a king. So this idea, this metaphor of like literally winning over the king in chess, like his love, it shows that they have a witty chemistry as well as an intense romantic connection, which is important for the long term after the events of the play.
Yeah.
And then also just as a whole, you know, Prospero is kind of throwing a dig at Alonso, or Alonza in this case, being like, yeah, I got your children and I won the king, you know. So it's a fun little button on the play, and especially for us two and our dynamic in it.
Right. And I mean, I think it is interesting because, like you said, you know, you mentioned the king, but the queen is pretty much the most powerful figure in chess, and so that also kind of adds an interesting element to understanding the importance of Miranda and not discounting her as a strong female figure. Because yeah, she would in fact, by winning the king, become the queen. All hail the queen.
I know, Miranda like really lucks out in this play in that the first man that she sees is the prince of the country that she was once the princess of. It's like, oh awesome, I get my whole life back just like I was supposed to.
And I think it is also interesting because you mentioned, you know, the first man that she sees, and again, another dismissed or discounted character very often is Caliban, because he's not seen as a man. He is mythologized into this monstrous figure. And I'm very curious. I can't wait. I'm going to talk to David, and I'm talking to Paxton, who's playing
Great.
Caliban. But I'm very interested in how you guys are going to play or depict Caliban, because he's often depicted in the play calling him like half fish. You know, it's the descriptions of him are not kind.
Mm-hmm.
But we never really understand if it's his actual physicality or if that is something that is being kind of put on him because he isn't the same as everybody else, right? So the same depictions as are often put on minority figures in history because they don't fit the mold, they're not what are expected. So we don't know if Shakespeare just kind of played into that and made him the outlier figure and gave him animalistic features because of that, or if he really was some kind of hybrid figure. So I am curious, Miranda, how you as she are going to play your relationship with Caliban.
Yeah, I don't want to spoil anything about Caliban because you're going to be obsessed with it. Paxton's doing a really cool job, and then the guy playing Ariel as well, both of our like mythological creatures in the show, they share some physical characteristics and some physical freedom that the rest of the actors don't have that I think will contextualize these questions you have for the audience and like play into the magic of the world. But for Miranda, her relationship to Caliban is a little bit more like visceral because she tries to teach him to speak, because I think that Miranda kind of saw Caliban as a pet when she was growing up. They have like this creature that her dad has around and she wants to play with it and interact with it, and then Caliban ends up attempting to rape Miranda, and then he ends up getting thrown in prison. There's this line in the show, there's this abhorred creature monologue given to Caliban, and that's sometimes been Prospero's or Miranda's, and for this production we chose to give it to Miranda, and I think that that really highlights her relationship to Caliban and her anger with what happened to her, and also her power as a character. So it's kind of Caliban's story is a little bit sadder to me than it will appear to the audience because he is like a comedic relief character, but there's a lot of like complicated emotions and like physical needs and stuff in that character that he gets punished for repeatedly.
Yeah, absolutely. I like that you brought up the magical elements. We've got Sycorax, who is Caliban's mother, who is a witch, who never actually shows up in the play, but is just mentioned and gives him that mythical element that he is, half witch, half devil, as his background story. Poor guy never stood a chance. And then we've got, like you said, Ariel. So why do you think in his last play there's so many elements of magic that show up? And I'll throw this one to Dalton first, but why are there so many elements of magic that seem to show up when in a lot of plays he really kind of keeps magic out of it?
I think it's a combination of a lot of things. I think, I don't know if Shakespeare knew this was going to be his last solo project or not. He may have. And so this idea of just throwing magic in the play and showing this surrealism of life almost, and in his time, a lot of magic is happening. People are going overseas, discovering or, colonizing America. And he's older, he's in his 40s at this point. And this concept that we are such stuff as dreams are made on, this idea, and it's shown in A Midsummer Night's Dream too, kind of there's that element of like magic and mysticalness of our life is what we shape it to be, and the wonder of the world is magic on its own, and so literally showing that with wizardry and surreal things and, big colors and fun things kind of cement that idea to audiences of his time and of our time that life is a dream and we're just we're going through it.
We're just dreaming it.
Yeah.
I like that. Yeah, I mean, it seems like he did know that he was going to be retiring, right? Because then he bought basically what amounts to a mansion back home and lived out his OG rock star dream of having the biggest house in the village. And a lot of people come back to that idea with Prospero, right? You relating him to Prospero, where every third thought is his grave, and the idea of mortality showing itself. With that being the case, what does that mean for you in terms of how he showed the lovers? Are the lovers an element of magic? Or do you think the lovers are more of a human element in a magical play?
I think you're dead on with the second one. I think that we're there for the audience almost, because it is this breath of fresh air, and the scenes are pretty lighthearted with Miranda and Ferdinand. There is the one where the Prospero is torturing him, but it's a comedy, so it's still pretty funny. And she's like, oh my god, he's so beautiful. So I think that they are really there to bring in love and levity to a play that deals with very dark issues, actually. And Alonza did a very terrible thing, and it's had all of these ramifications, and now Prospero is like dead set on revenge, and it's a very dark concept for a comedy, very different from Midsummer. And then we have these two characters that like come dancing through for a couple pages every couple of acts, and it brings in so much joy to the show.
Yeah.
I love the dancing through. I now have a totally different vision of you guys frolicking across the stage.
Yeah. It's pretty accurate.
It's bringing me joy already.
Yeah. I totally agree with the idea that this is this real love in such a magical world. And I think part of it, like what you said, is, this all starts as a strategy for Prospero. It wouldn't matter if I was a jerk or not. He would probably end up still wanting to marry you to me, just to, one, get back at Alonza, and also restore his former dukedom. And so this idea of like actually winning his approval as Ferdinand is probably more than he expected, This idea that we're just chess pieces in the game that Prospero is playing is so interesting. But I like the idea that the trueness of the love actually wins him and Alonza both over. And this idea that it's like it started as a game, and then it became something so real. And I think the audience will get that too. And I think that's something very fun that we're playing with in this production of The Tempest.
Oh, I do love that. And it is interesting because he does always, with his comedies, there is always that real element of darkness that comes through. Especially if you look at some of the subplots and you're like, oh, no. Like, you're just like, haha, like, Winter's Tale, Merchant of Venice, Gentleman of Verona, God help us all. So what does it mean for you to be that relief for the audience, to be that element that brings light to the dark? How do you do that?
I think just playing the truth of these characters really, brings to the front all this text that Shakespeare is wanting to get across, both Ferdinand and Miranda, their whole thing is they love each other, that's that's the big character plot points for both of them. And so I think it's very natural in the way it just comes across as light and fun, because a lot of audiences can relate to that first love, youthful love, like love at first sight, kind of like, oh wow, this is amazing. And then as an actor, like, being that breath of fresh air out of the darkness, it's cool. That's really all I got to say about it. It's cool. It's a lot of fun. It's nice playing, the young, charming lover every once in a while. And so performing it is a lot of fun. I know performing it for an audience is a lot of fun. I'm very excited to see what other people's reactions are to it. Just in the cast, I see a lot of smiles and like, oh, I like this because it's very relatable. Everyone's been there, I hope. And so just seeing Young Love on stage it's so cool, and it's cool portraying it as well.
Yeah. My technique for it, I guess, is not carrying the weight of the play, but carrying the weight of these two characters' plot. And then, like, I'm not all tied up in Prospero's very long monologues and his plots and stuff. Because, like, that's kind of Prospero and Ariel. They have that through line of the show of it. And Miranda, like, can't even see Ariel half the time. And sometimes we can't see Prospero. So, like, just carrying the only thing that matters to her once she sees Ferdinand is Ferdinand. That makes it very easy to just go through with all of the fun, joyful things.
Yeah. What do you think of the parental relationships in this play?
It's so much fun. I'm having so much fun with Lance. He taught at OU this past semester because we had a professor leave and we had to have someone come fill in. He taught our advanced Shakespeare class and I wasn't in that, so I just kept hearing everyone be like, Lance is awesome, Miriam, you have to meet him. And then I got cast and I was like, guys, he's playing my dad. And
Everyone be jealous.
they were really excited for me. And I met him and it's been such like a fun... His Prospero is very jovial when he's with Miranda and very like fatherly, and it's this very close relationship because all they've really had is each other for her whole life. So it's been really fun to explore that and explore like when she has her 14-year-old attitude with him and when she actually is really invested in what he has to tell her. That's a really fun dynamic to explore.
Oh, I love that.
And then my mom is gone half the play. And it's a lot of fun. I clearly am a mama's boy to an extent. Changing Alonzo to Alonza in this production really opens a new gateway for Ferdinand, because...
That is funny. That's so true.
Yeah, it really does. There's sort of this, dependence on a mom, He's young and he's the prince of, Naples, and he's been with his mom his whole life, and then they're separated, and then there's this new girl, and then suddenly it's like, oh, well, her death doesn't bother me so much. A lot of monologues that Ferdinand has are just interspersed with, oh yeah, my whole family is dead, and then he's like, but that's okay because you're here. And so I'm toying a lot with this idea of escapism too through love, and a big propulsion of this love is from this great tragedy that befell Ferdinand, where he's separated from his closest relatives and friends, pretty much he just left his sister, at the altar from the wedding on the way back to Italy. And then he wrecks. And in his mind, everyone he knows is dead, except for his sister, who he will never see again. And so this escapism upon seeing Miranda, I feel, is a big part of it, away from the mom onto the wife, this dependence on Miranda is a big part of what I'm going for with Ferdinand so far while we're playing it. And I think it's a lot of fun.
Yeah, I mean, I love the change because really when you think about it, like Shakespeare writes shitty moms. Like the moms in Shakespeare, it's kind of like Disney where like all the moms are dead. It's like that. That's kind of what it kind of came from Shakespeare, where there's kind of an absence of moms, or definitely an absence of good moms. Like you look at Juliet's mom, worst mom ever.
All of them.
But so I do love that turning point because it does actually create a relationship between a son and mother, which I'm like racking my brain to like think of another mother-son relationship in Shakespeare, and I'm just kind of drawing, well, Romeo has a not horrendous relationship with his mother.
Yeah.
There's only a few lines in there, but it's not terrible. But it is a really interesting twist to make. I can't wait to talk to David about it and see like why he decided to change that casting, and if it was just because he found someone who he was like, you are perfect. But both of your mothers, figures, parental units, are in some ways the villains, right? If we think about it, because what Prospero did, yes, there was a method to the madness, but still created a shipwreck. Like, not the not the nicest way to go about reuniting with family. But when you're dealing with, Lance as Prospero and that relationship that you have, how are you dealing with that revelation of what he is capable of? Is that something, because and I think kind of you've got to deal with that same thing, Dalten, where it's like, because I'm sure your mother didn't tell you that she ousted everybody. So how do you, as a character, deal with that revelation that the person that you love and that have been dependent on is not who you thought they were?
I think that's an interesting question, and I want to turn it a little bit, because I think that Miranda is pretty aware of her father's power. Her first line of the show is, "If by your art, my dearest father, you have caused this storm." And then she starts yelling at him. She's like, "Stop it, how dare you, you've hurt all these people, I'm so angry at you." Like, she comes in at a 10, being like, "Dad, stop, I'm so mad at you." And then he's very easily able to distract her and be like, "Do you actually want to know how we came to this island?" So she knows his power, and he puts her to sleep in that first couple pages, so she knows about his magic. Right now we're toying in rehearsal with the idea of, does Miranda have any magic that she's learned from her father? What is her magical relationship to him, to Caliban, to all of these characters? So I think he gives these long monologues to her where it's also for the audience, where he's explaining how they came to this island, what Alonza has done, and she doesn't really care. She keeps getting distracted. She really just wants to know if the people on the boat are okay and what he did. So I think, I don't know, it might just be her being a little bit of a selfish teenager. She's just kind of like, yeah, I know my dad's a big deal, but I'm mad at him right now. It might be a little bit less complicated than it is for Alonza and Ferdinand.
Well, it's funny you say that, because as far as I'm aware, Ferdinand never finds out, not once. Mm-hmm. So I believe, the moral of this story is forgiveness. And so I definitely think, as for the future, in which, Alonza, now that I'm thinking about it, actually has a line where it's like, "How strange must I ask my own child forgiveness, mm-hmm. to forgive me for all that I've done and that I've separated and that, I wasn't there for him," which also strengthens that kind of dependence theory that I was talking about earlier. But, he never finds out in the context of the script, but I do believe, I'm sure she confesses to everything. And knowing Prospero's tricks, I'm sure he's like, you better confess to everything or I'm just going to tell him, because he does that to a couple characters. And so within the context of the play, I still love my mom, and I, being the noble I am, I'm sure that I would forgive her if she ends up telling me after the events. Because it works out, and that's all he really cares about. He gets the girl, he gets the mom, everyone's happy. It's great.
What do you think he thinks
really care that much that she was missing.
Yeah. What do you think he thinks of Prospero? Is he really scared of him?
Well, who isn't scared of their father-in-law? Especially with an imposing figure as the wonderful Lance Marsh is. But also, he's so impressed, especially with the wedding. He's like, "Let me live here, ever so rare a wondered father and a wife, makes this place paradise." And so this idea of yeah, my father-in-law is a magician, and so I think this balance of fear and wonder ties into the context of the play really well as well. But yeah, I think Ferdinand's as scared of him as he is impressed.
Yeah. But that line's really cool, because part of why Prospero was banished was for his magic and his love of books. And now this new generation is like bringing all of that together and loves both elements of it. I think that's cool.
Yeah. Ferdinand and Miranda will make a great king and queen of Naples. Like, they got it. They got it.
So you guys see this relationship going the distance.
Yeah.
This is one of Shakespeare's relationships that will not be a dumpster fire.
Yeah, I know she's like 14, but I think that's when you got married then, so.
It's, it's literally, I mean, I think the Little Mermaid's based off the Tempest a little bit. I mean, her name's literally Ariel, but like, Daddy, I love him, like, and it works out for them. So Little Mermaid 2, so the Tempest 2, I think we got it,
That's the best. So you mentioned, Miriam, the whole, does Miranda have magic? And I love that question because when we're talking about Shakespeare and what he's writing and his connection to Prospero, right? An ability with words that create something magical, right? That kind of talks to his abilities as a playwright and a poet to create something magical with words that transports people, that creates magic. And he, you talked about Miranda teaching Caliban how to speak. So obviously her knowledge, her way with words is something that she has learned and is trying to transmit. So I think there is a really interesting play there of generational knowledge and love. And his daughter does have, an epitaph on her grave talking about her wit. So it does make you wonder if it got transmuted to his daughter as well. And again, it's another discussion of what Shakespeare is giving up at the end when Prospero casts his books out. What is the magic that we possess with language? What is its power and what is its detriment? And so I think that that's a really interesting thing that you're touching on with Miranda. Will she be a magician?
That's a really beautiful take. All of Shakespeare's familial relationships for me are now colored by this Hamnet movie that blew up. It's seeing an actor depict Shakespeare himself is so rare, and that those familial relationships, it makes me think so much deeper about his family relationships, even though it's fiction,
Yeah, but I mean, it's a pretty solid depiction. It's definitely a fictionalized account, but it gives us, like you said, some grasp of something that we have so little of.
Yeah.
And I think Shakespeare did that on purpose because, he didn't want his hands cut off or anything. His plays always skirted the line. And so I think the less people knew about him, the safer he was in terms of what he could say and do.
What you're saying about him maybe giving his gift of writing to his daughter makes me think of if Hamlet was written for his son, maybe there's elements of his daughter he sees in Miranda and the Prospero Miranda relationship.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, I feel like I have a lot to say about that specifically. Because that's so interesting because this play was written around 1611. And something very interesting historically is that, 3 years before in 1607, his oldest daughter, Susanna, got married to a Dr. John Hall. And there's this, and I never made the connection before, but there's this monologue near the end delivered by the wonderful Lance Marsh, who's one of the best Shakespearean performers I've ever seen. Don't tell him I said that. But he delivers this monologue directly to me, and it's like, you look my son in a moved sort, and he has this whole thing where he's like, oh, we're dreams, I'm old, I give you my daughter, she's yours now, And a lot of people consider Prospero to be Shakespeare's self-insert, especially since the play itself is so original compared to his other plays. And he was delivering that to me, and it was so real and authentic. At first, I was touched. I was like, oh, wow. And then I was like, wait, I'm Dr. John Hall, And so this idea of these being like real people, if Prospero is Shakespeare and Miranda is Prospero's oldest daughter, as Susanna was to Shakespeare, and then this marriage of like, I ratify Miranda, your rich gift, Ferdinand. I think there's so many parallels between what little we know of Shakespeare's personal life that I'm like, he might have just been writing about that, especially since it's so original. And so I find that so fascinating, researching Susanna and John, of like how that fits into this idea of love at first sight and the approval of the father-in-law, and how that all ties in together, both historically and through performance. I think it's really cool.
Yeah, absolutely. And this is one of his, depending on perspective, least jaded relationships. There's always a joke about every couple in Shakespeare. If you just give them enough time, it's going to turn into a dumpster fire.
Yeah.
And so I really enjoyed hearing you all talk about the success of what you all could do as a couple, as a power couple. Because again, it doesn't happen very often. Most of the time we look at, Shakespeare's characters and we're like, oh, why? Why Shakespeare?
Yeah.
He's like, it's a comedy. They're going to get married. And you're like, oh no.
Oh yeah, all's well. Whew.
We're all like, does that really end well?
Yeah.
Don't do it. But yeah, it always seems like the Band-Aid, right? The last thing where it's like, oh, it's comedy. Everyone gets married. Whether they should or shouldn't, doesn't matter. And this is one, and it's again his last one. So you're like, oh, is this kind of a last perspective on what love could be, versus, because his relationship with his wife was tenuous at best. It just makes you wonder. I love what you said about his daughter and his new son-in-law. Like, that is that him giving us a new perspective on love from what he's given us before?
I think so, for sure. And it ties back to what you said about, the new generation being the new ideal and the new standard of like progression that we see. Because supposedly, and I don't know much about this myself, but Shakespeare loved John. And I know for sure that there was this big court case where John sued a guy for slandering his wife's name. Mm-hmm. And so a lot of Shakespeare's earlier plays up through his life, I think a big problem with the romances is that the man never respects the women in the relationship, It's always true, especially, stuff like Taming of the Shrew, where it's like the man gets the dowry and then that's the moral. And then, the wife is deemed inferior. But in The Tempest, we see Ferdinand actually respects Miranda far above himself. He believes he's the king of Naples, and him, she is the goddess of the world, of the island, She is a deity. And so I think Shakespeare seeing that in his oldest daughter and, this guy that he is totally into, John Hall, I think seeing that in the next generation really inspires him to write Ferdinand and Miranda to be Miranda is above Ferdinand. And I think that ideal of love in this play compared to his others is so much more noble and in line with, modern society. And I think it's such a fun take on love. And I think that's part of what makes it so real and authentic and to last.
Love it. So as you're getting ready, so you've got about 3 more weeks, right? About 3, it opens up June 11th. So you guys have just started. You're just getting into it now.
Yeah.
So this production is actually an outdoor production. So have either of you acted outdoors before? Is this your first outdoor production?
I have directed a few Shakespeare in the Parks myself, but I have never been on stage for one. So this will be fun. Now I'm like, I see why my actors wanted water so much. I kid, but it's a lot of fun. I love being outside. It's nice weather for the most part right now. So, I like it. I think it's a lot of fun. I get dirt on my face. And it's just so much more intimate being outside in a way too, because you get to look right at people and your hair is blowing in the wind. Yeah. And it's magical, and it provides so much more opportunity for things to change just based on the weather, and then like helicopters passing overhead or, storms coming in. Like it changes the context of the show, which I'm so excited to adapt to as we go forwards.
I love that. Yeah, poor Lance last summer was in a fat suit.
Yeah.
So I bet he's really excited to not have a fat suit this time around.
He's already made many a joke about it. So yeah, I think it sticks.
Oh man. So with being outdoors, I mean, even indoors with Shakespeare, there tends to be a lot of audience interaction because, I mean, Shakespeare kind of wrote it that way. The groundlings were, by and large, interactive, whether they were throwing things or just responding to what was going on with the stage. How do you prepare for that? How do you either practice, train, rehearse for, like you said, some things there's a plane and all of a sudden you have to incorporate that, or there's audience interaction. How do you deal with that as an actor?
I really love improv, and I've spent a lot of time playing silly improv games and doing shows and stuff, and that just kind of gives you a lot of confidence to relax into a situation like that. Like, if I am 100% solid on my lines and blocking, then I can kind of let that go and let that shift with the environment around me. And that's how I prefer to act. I prefer to have everything down, and then I can play. So hopefully starting next week, I won't pick my script back up and I can just be in the moment discovering new things each time.
Yeah, I love audience interaction and anything, and I think that's a big part of why I like Shakespeare so much. Ferdinand specifically talks to the audience a lot, as much as Prospero, if not more. Half of his lines are I'm going to tell everyone else what I'm thinking. These kind of self-soliloquies and asides are, and it's so much fun, and that's part of the reason I'm so glad I got this character over anyone else. Currently I'm practicing by just talking to the crew and the people watching. If I see you in the audience, you're a target, But it gives me a lot of confidence knowing that audiences love one-of-a-kind shows, if a baby is crying in the audience, right? And I, as an actor, say literally anything about that, the entire audience erupts into laughter. It doesn't have to be funny. They just love that they know that that's never happened before, And so the confidence to just be hey, I'm looking at you and I'm saying things to you and you're the one I'm saying things to. People like it, for the most part. Some people don't like being in the spotlight, and that's part of it, but this idea of community in theater is so strengthened by making them a part of the show. It's a lot of fun for me. I don't know.
I love it. So do you have any favorite roles that you've played over the years?
I recently got to be in Body Awareness by Annie Baker. I'm a big Annie Baker fan, and I got to play Joyce, which is the main girl kind of. It's a pretty well split ensemble, but that was really fun, and it dealt with some themes that I've never got to explore. And then my favorite thing I did was about 2 years ago, I got to be Catherine in Proof at OU, and now seeing that on Broadway, I'm I have to get out there and see it because I love that play and I loved being that character.
I've played Hal once upon a time, so we were destined to be Ferdinand and Miranda. Yeah.
You can't really make it through college without playing Hal or Catherine. So
yeah, it's like a standard. It's like a standard. And then as for me, I can't pick a favorite role because I just love every single one that I get into. Whether it's it's Hamlet himself or it's Rosencrantz. I just there's so much to do with so many things. But in terms of Shakespeare, Malvolio was probably a favorite of mine because he's a big challenge because he's way older than I am. But he's a lot of fun. He's goofy. He's one of Shakespeare's big guys. So that's a shout out for me.
What are you trying to accomplish here? So,
oh my gosh.
What is she doing? So Miriam, you have just graduated. So what, obviously you have summer plans. What comes next? Do you have an idea of what your next step is in the journey?
I am really interested in pursuing the world of like film and TV for a long time. So, after I finish up this show, I'm gonna go home for a bit and see the family, and then I'm heading out to LA.
Oh,
I'm really excited. I love the heat. My first time going out there was actually in March, and I just loved it. I met some really great people, so I'm gonna go out there and do the thing out there.
that's awesome.
Yeah,
Wow. If you need any LA connections, just let me know.
I will hit you up for sure.
It's a fun place. It's a fun place to be.
Yeah, and a lot of
Wow.
my friends from OU were all moving out there, but none of us are living together. So we all have the opportunity to meet new people and like have that community that we all love.
That's a really good plan. I
Yeah.
like this plan.
Thanks.
What is happening? Uh, and then Dalton, you have 1 year left.
Yes, I
And
do. I'm almost
then-
done.
You are deciding your next step. Any thoughts on your next step in this journey?
Like going towards senior year or afterwards?
Like after?
Ooh, afterwards. Yeah, I've been locking in for the past like half a year, and the next year I really want to go to graduate school. So I'm researching a lot about that. I'm taking my GRE, my graduate record examination, in August, so very, very soon. I've been studying for that, and I'm having to relearn math because I slacked on it, you know. So that's my fun challenge. But studying for that is kind of the next step for me. And then when I get there, we'll figure it out.
That's awesome.
What are you
okay.
going to grad school for?
I want to go for performance and pedagogy, but I very much am into theater history, so I kind of want to see what the workarounds are for that. I want to get my MFA, but the idea of doing a thesis on something for a doctorate is so appealing to me. But just, it's all up in the air. I'm like I said, I'm researching a lot. I'm finding out what I like, what I want to do for the next 4 years, you know, but further education is definitely my big thing.
Yeah, and you'll find your thing. Like when I was getting my PhD, I'm Jewish, so I was like, oh, like Jews, you know, that connected to Shakespeare so clearly, and so then it was just Jews and Shakespeare, and then I was like, ah, dissertation, and so you know, you'll find your inner Jew.
I'll let them know.
That's so funny. I'm Jewish as well, and I started reading Merchant of Venice, and I was like, wow, oh man. So
I mean, it's amazing. I've written about it a lot. My dissertation was long. But, you know, between Jew of Malta, The Merchant of Venice, it's so interesting how much it changed. You know, and it's so easy to villainize Shylock, just like it's so easy to villainize, you know, many of Shakespeare's kind of monstrous characters.
Caliban too.
But it's also one of the most, you know, Shylock is one of the most humanized characters with Shakespeare, which he adapted that play very much, like, he jacked that play. He was like, all right, we're going to take this and turn it into The Merchant of Venice. But the biggest thing he did was give Shylock an identity, a daughter, and loss.
are you familiar with, I think it's District Merchants by Aaron Posner?
I've heard of it. I haven't read it.
You should give it a read. I'm a big Aaron Posner fan, and he's obviously a Jewish playwright, and it's really interesting to see his take on that character.
Oh, I will. Sounds fun. Okay, and then my last question that I wanted to ask both of you was just to kind of hear about any advice you had for up-and-coming actors as they start thinking about what they want to do, if they want to go to grad school, if they want to go to LA. What advice would you give them to think about?
That's so funny. I feel like right now I'm asking everyone else for advice. I'm very up and coming.
Advice you've got.
Yeah. Right now, what I've been like telling underclassmen and when like people ask for advice, I've been saying is like, find what makes you unique and pursue it completely. A lot of being in like a 4-year BFA program or a BA program, whatever you're in, is you spend a lot of time doing the exact same thing with the exact same people. And there can be these ideas of exactly how your voice is supposed to sound and how your body is supposed to move. And it is not actually what's going to serve you in the industry or as an artist. Pursuing what like makes you special is what makes you castable. And that's what I'm trying to focus on, like what my actual interests are outside of what my professors told me to be interested in for 4 years.
That's an amazing piece of advice.
Yes, for sure. Yeah, and then off that, like this, a lot of what my professors have told me is very similar to that. You know, learn all the rules and then break them. Because my big problem is that I stick to the rules like I'm really rigid and like I need to do it, and they're like, but that's not you though, you know. And so that's great advice. As for Shakespeare and like getting into Shakespeare, a lot of people tell me that they are like worried to do it or to go audition for it, even though, you know, it's done everywhere. Yeah. Well, it worked out. So, you know, case in point, I say just go do it. You know, in Shakespeare's time, I kind of equate it to Marvel movies today. You know, it has a big fan base. It's fluff. A lot of people go see it, and they don't think about it afterward. You know, like they could be like, "Wow, have you seen, you know, the new Iron Man 2?" People were like, "Prithee, hast thou seen Love's Labours 1?" You know. And so, like, don't put it on a pedestal and don't think it's higher than yourself. You know, the hardest part is translating it because it's old. But shoot, just go out and do it. Go audition for the Tempest and Julius Caesar and all of OSP's stuff and all the stuff they do everywhere, because it's just so much fun. And there's like a whole world behind Shakespeare just to be unlocked. I used to be a Shakespeare hater, and it's just because I didn't understand him. And I was like, one day I was like, well, I got to learn eventually, you know? And then I did, and it changed my life completely. And now I'm a huge fan and doing all sorts of Shakespeare stuff. So just go do it.
Yeah, don't put
Nike,
Shakespeare on
you
a
know?
pedestal. That's amazing advice. I like it. All right, well, that was brilliant advice from both of you. Thank you so much. And, you know, I think it's great because both of you are just moving forward. And I think that's a lot, like, that's the scariest thing. Taking chances, right? Going to grad school, going to LA, doing the thing. So I think that that's awesome. I hope everybody will go out and do the thing, whatever the thing is. Go find your thing and go do it. But please, everybody, if you are in Oklahoma or even in the vicinity, go see The Tempest at OSP. It opens up June 11th, and then it is until when? Can you guys remind me?
28th.
Yes, the 28th. It's June 11th to the 28th. The last 3 weekends of June. It'll be awesome.
And it's in an outdoor
Thursday through
theater.
Sunday?
And then just remember, it's an outdoor, so you can get beverages there. They have delicious beverages. Ask Henri. And then get a pizza. You can take in food with you. Make it a picnic. Go enjoy yourselves. And thank you both for bringing back like some of the endearing elements of the lovers, because I think I've been a little jaded, and now I feel like a little less jaded about it. So I appreciate
That's awesome.
Yeah.
Thanks
I
for
hope we
bringing
do that
the
for
love
the
back.
audience.
All right, everybody. Well, thank you again so much for coming on the episode. It's been so much fun. And just remember, all the world's a stage, and you too can be a shrew. Bye.